It had been another long day, the kind that slowly drained a person without them even noticing how much energy had slipped away. The main character of this story had been living this routine for months, moving from morning to night as if life were a long hallway filled with noise, pressure, and never-ending deadlines. Every morning started with the loud buzz of an alarm, and every evening ended with the same tired thought. Maybe tomorrow would feel different. But tomorrow always felt the same. Work came with responsibilities that left little room to breathe. Phones rang constantly, messages piled up, and the office was always filled with the quiet tension of people trying to keep up. Even during lunch breaks, the mind kept spinning, thinking about everything still left undone. There were days when the weight of it all felt like something sitting on the chest, making it hard to take a full breath. At home, things weren't much easier. The body might have left the office, but the mind continued running. Thoughts kept repeating themselves, like a cycle that refused to stop. Sleep became harder, and nights felt longer. The room was quiet, but the inner noise was loud. Rest did not feel like rest anymore. It felt like another challenge. The character tried the usual things people often suggest. A warm cup of tea at night, a short walk after work, a few minutes of stretching. These things helped for a moment, but the calm always faded quickly. It felt like pouring water into a bucket with a small hole at the bottom. No matter how much effort was added, something kept leaking out. There were moments when they wondered if life was supposed to feel this heavy. Other people seemed to move through their day with more ease. When watching others laugh or relax, it created a small ache inside, a reminder of how long it had been since they felt that kind of lightness. One evening, after finishing a difficult day, they sat on the edge of the bed staring at the soft glow of the phone screen. The room was dim, and the only sound was the faint hum of a ceiling fan. They weren't looking for anything specific, just scrolling to distract the mind from the heaviness sitting there like a quiet shadow. The endless scroll of videos and thumbnails felt like noise, even in silence. Everything seemed too loud, too fast, too bright. Then a simple title caught their eye: Classical Music Therapy, Stress Relief Collection. The cover image wasn't flashy. It was just a peaceful picture of a calm lake under soft evening light. Something about it felt gentle, comfortable, safe. Without thinking much, they tapped on it. The first soft notes of a piano filled the room. The melody was slow and warm, each note floating gently like ripples moving across still water. It wasn't the kind of music that demanded attention. It simply existed in the air, inviting the mind to slow down. They leaned back against the headboard, letting the sound settle around them. For the first time that week, the tension in their shoulders seemed to ease just a little. The music created a space that felt different, almost like stepping into a quiet corner of the world where nothing needed to be solved right away. As the piano continued, a soft violin joined, blending into a harmony that felt familiar even though they had never heard it before. It reminded them of childhood moments, soft mornings, calm afternoons, memories that felt gentle and far away. The kind of moments that made life feel simple. The music didn't fix anything in that instant. It didn't erase the problems waiting for tomorrow, but it softened the noise inside. The thoughts that usually ran in circles began to slow. The mind felt less crowded, less sharp, less heavy. It was as if someone had opened a small window inside, letting in a fresh breath of air. They closed their eyes, allowing the sound to fill the space around them. Each note felt like a step away from the stress that had been following them for months. The music wasn't pushing anything away. It was gently reminding the heart that peace still existed somewhere. Minutes passed without them noticing. The soft glow of the phone screen faded as the device dimmed. The room felt different now. Not brighter, not louder, just calmer. When they opened their eyes again, their breathing had slowed. Their chest felt lighter. The weight they carried daily seemed less sharp. It was such a small shift, but it felt important, like the beginning of something they didn't even know they needed. They listened until the tracks slowly faded out, replaced by the quiet of the room. For the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt natural. That night, when they lay down to sleep, the music still echoed softly in their mind. The gentle rhythm stayed with them, wrapping around the thoughts that usually kept them awake. Instead of replaying the stress of the day, the mind drifted with the melody. Sleep came more easily than it had in a long time. The breathing slowed, the muscles relaxed, and the world felt softer. There was no dramatic moment or big realization, just the simple comfort of calm when morning came. The first thing they remembered was how peaceful the night had felt. It wasn't a perfect sleep, but it was better than anything they'd had recently. As they sat up and stretched, the thought crossed their mind. Maybe this music could help again, on the way to work. Instead of rushing through the morning in silence, they put in their earphones and played the same collection. The soft strings and quiet piano notes followed them on the bus, smoothing the edges of the day before it even began. The city noise outside didn't feel as sharp. The usual tension of the morning rush seemed easier to handle. And for the first time in a long while, they felt a small sense of control, like maybe they could guide their day instead of being pulled through it. The discovery of that playlist had been accidental. Just a moment of curiosity on a tired evening. But that moment quietly changed something inside. It opened a door to a kind of peace they had forgotten they could feel. They didn't know yet how much this music would shape the days ahead. They didn't know how it would become part of their mornings, nights, and quiet moments in between. But that first night, when they took a chance on something simple, was the start of a new rhythm in their life. A rhythm that sounded like calm. A rhythm that felt like breathing again. And all of it began with a soft melody that drifted gently into a tired room. Offering comfort when it was needed the most, the next few days unfolded in a way the main character hadn't expected. Life was still busy, work was still demanding, and stress still tried to creep in like it always had. But something small had shifted inside them after discovering that playlist. It wasn't a huge change, not something anyone else could see, but it was real, and it mattered. Every morning now started with the gentle sound of classical music. They no longer rushed out the door with a clouded mind. Instead, they sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, breathed slowly, and let the soft notes guide them into the day. It wasn't a ritual they planned. It just happened naturally, because it felt right. On the bus ride to work, city noise still surrounded them. Cars honking, people chatting, the sound of engines and footsteps mixed together. But the music softened the world. Instead of reacting to the noise, they felt removed from it, like they were watching everything from a calm distance. The gentle piano made the morning air feel lighter at work. Things hadn't magically become easier, but they found themselves reacting differently. When someone asked for help urgently, they didn't feel the same sharp pressure in their chest. When emails piled up, they didn't panic. The music they'd listened to that morning stayed with them quietly, reminding them to breathe. Coworkers noticed something different. Not big changes, but small ones, less sighing, fewer rushed movements, a calmer tone in their voice. Someone even commented that they seemed more peaceful lately. They just smiled, unsure how to explain that a playlist had become their morning companion. One evening, after a long day, they returned home feeling drained. The kind of tired that doesn't just sit in the body, but also in the mind. They set their bag down and took a slow breath. Normally, they would collapse on the couch or sit in silence trying to decompress. But this time, without thinking, they opened the playlist again. The music filled the room like a warm breeze. This time the melody was soft and steady, like someone walking beside them at a calm pace. They sank into the chair, closed their eyes, and let the sound wash over the day. The tension in their shoulders softened first, then the tightness in their forehead. Even their breathing seemed to find a slower rhythm. They stayed like that for a long time. Not asleep, not fully awake, just resting. The kind of rest that comes not from silence but from something gentle, holding the mind in place. Later that night, he pulled out an old notebook. It was something they hadn't touched in months. The pages were mostly blank, but there were a few notes written on earlier pages. Random thoughts, unfinished ideas, small reflections. They sat with the notebook open on their lap, listening to the music, and for the first time in a while, words began to come. They wrote about the stress they had been carrying, the moments that had felt too heavy, and how the music had given them a small escape. The words weren't perfect or organized. They didn't need to be. They were just honest. And for some reason, honesty felt easier with the music playing. Over the next week, this became part of their evening routine. They would come home, play the playlist, and let their mind settle. Some nights they wrote, other nights they simply lay down with their eyes closed. Each night felt slightly better than the one before. One particular evening, something interesting happened. After a very hectic day, they played the music like usual. But instead of sitting quietly, they found themselves humming along with the melody. It surprised them because they didn't usually hum or sing. But the tune felt familiar now, like a friend they had grown comfortable with. The humming made them smile. A small smile, but it was real. They started paying more attention to the instruments in each track. Some pieces had slow piano notes that felt like soft footsteps on a wooden floor. Others had flowing violin melodies that reminded them of wind passing through leaves. Some pieces had quiet cellos that felt like grounding, holding the heart steady. They began to appreciate the details, the rise and fall of each note, the way each instrument added warmth. One day, during a break at work, they searched online for information about how music affects the brain. They found articles explaining how classical music can slow the heart rate, calm the mind, and reduce stress. They were surprised to learn that many people around the world used music in the same way they now were, as a form of therapy, quiet friend in moments of stress. This made them feel less alone. They realized that feeling overwhelmed wasn't a personal failure. It was something many people struggled with but didn't talk about. And if something as simple as music could help even a little, then maybe they weren't as powerless as they once thought. With each passing day, the playlist became more than just background sound. It became a part of their life, a steady, calming presence. On nights when they couldn't sleep, they turned to the music. On mornings when they felt too tired to face the day, they let the melody push them forward. On afternoons, when stress tried to return, they remembered the rhythm and breathed slowly. The bond with the music grew stronger after an emotional moment one weekend. They had been cleaning the house, trying to distract themselves from the growing pressure that had built up during the week. The playlist played softly in the background. As they cleaned, a particular track began a slow, emotional string piece. The first few notes were enough to stop them in their tracks. Something about the melody touched a part of their heart that they had ignored for a long time. Memories, surface moments from childhood, quiet afternoons spent with family, small joys that had been forgotten under layers of stress. Before they realized it, their eyes were wet. Not from sadness, but from a strange mixture of relief and emotion. The music had reached a place inside them that had been silent for years. It felt like opening a window in a dusty room and letting fresh air rush in. They sat down on the floor and listened, letting the music guide their breathing. The tears were gentle, not painful. After a while, they wiped their face and took a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, they felt lighter. That moment became a turning point. They began to understand that the music wasn't only helping them relax, it was helping them connect with themselves again, not the tired version of themselves who dragged through each day, but the one who still held hope and softness inside. From that day forward, the playlist became a safe space, a place where they could think, feel, and breathe naturally. One night, after listening to the music for almost an hour, they sat quietly on the bed and noticed something important. They felt present, fully present, not stuck in thoughts of the past or worries about the future. They felt grounded in that small moment. It was simple, but beautiful. The next morning, they noticed that even the ride to work felt different. They watched people around them, some rushing, some yawning, some lost in their own thoughts, and realized how many people might be carrying their own hidden stress. They wondered how many of them needed something small and gentle, just like they had needed the music. When they arrived at work, they took a deep breath before stepping inside. The music still echoed faintly in their memory, and with that little echo, the day felt more manageable. By the end of the week, they knew one thing clearly. This music was not just helping them deal with stress. It was slowly becoming part of the rhythm of their life. Not something forced, but something that naturally blended into their mornings, evenings, and quiet moments in between. They didn't know exactly where this new routine would lead. They didn't know how much it would shape the future, but they could feel something changing bit by bit. The stress was still there, but the grip it had on their life was loosening, and it all began with a single click on a playlist. It gently made its way into their world and quietly stayed there, giving them a little more peace each day. The days continued to move forward, each one carrying its own challenges, yet something inside the main character kept feeling different. Not perfect, not fully healed, but steadier. The classical music had quietly made its place in their life, and now it flowed through their days like a gentle undercurrents, soft, calming. Almost like a friend who didn't need words to understand. Every morning began with the same simple ritual. They woke up, stretched slowly, reached for their phone, and played the first track of the playlist. The music filled the quiet room, brushing away the leftover tiredness from the night. It made their mornings feel soft instead of rushed. The melodies shaped the start of each day, and gradually, the calm they felt in the morning began to last longer. Work still had its usual rush. There were still difficult moments, urgent messages, and tasks that piled up faster than they could finish them. But their reaction to it all had changed. Instead of feeling like stress controlled their whole day, they found small ways to stay grounded. Sometimes they took a short break, stepped outside, and let a quiet melody replay in their mind. Other times they closed their eyes for a few seconds and remembered the calm rhythm they'd heard that morning. People at work noticed the difference more clearly by now. Someone mentioned they looked more relaxed. Another commented that they seemed more focused than before. One coworker even asked what had changed, but they simply replied that they were taking things one day at a time. They didn't know how to explain the role music had begun to play in their life without sounding strange. But deep inside, they knew that the playlist was the one thing keeping them steady. In the evenings, the music became a bridge between the stress of the day and the peace they wanted to feel before sleep. After finishing dinner, they dimmed the lights and played the playlist once again. The room always felt different when the music filled it, almost as if the air itself softened. They began to enjoy sitting quietly with the sound, letting their mind release the weight it had carried through the day. One night, after a particularly busy day, they decided to take a warm shower before lying down with the music. The water and the melody blended together, creating a simple moment of comfort. When they stepped out, they felt unusually light. Not tired, not stressed, just present. They wrapped themselves in a blanket, sat on the bed, and listened with their eyes closed. As the notes floated through the air, something unexpected happened. They felt a sense of gratitude rise within them. Gratitude for the small things, the music, the quiet moments, the little shifts that had begun to change their life. They realized they hadn't felt grateful in a long time. Stress had taken so much space that there was no room left for anything gentle. But now, slowly, the gentle parts of life were beginning to return. Over the next week, the playlist became part of more than just morning and night. They started listening during simple daily tasks, folding clothes, cleaning the kitchen, or even preparing dinner. Each moment felt calmer with the music playing softly in the background. The tasks didn't feel rushed anymore. They felt slow and peaceful, like resetting the mind. On weekends, they allowed themselves more time with the playlist. Sometimes they lay on the floor with a cushion under their head, letting the harmonies circle around them. Other times they sat by the window watching the world outside while listening. The music seemed to match the weather, to soft on cloudy days, warm on sunny days, comforting during the rain. There was one Saturday morning when they decided to go for a walk in a nearby park. They put on their earphones, turned on the playlist, and stepped outside. The world felt bright and alive. Children laughed in the distance, birds chirped, and the breeze brushed past their face. The classical music blended with these natural sounds, creating a peaceful moment they didn't know they had been missing. They walked slowly, taking in the small details around them, the movement of leaves, the rhythm of footsteps, the soft glow of sunlight on the pavement. With every step, the stress they had carried for years seemed to loosen. For the first time in a long while, their mind wasn't racing ahead or replaying the past. It was right there in the moment, As they continued walking, they passed a small pond. The water was still, with gentle ripples forming from the wind. They found a bench nearby and sat down, letting the music guide their breathing. Sitting there listening, they felt something inside settle deeply. Not just calm clarity. They realized that in the past months, they had been moving so quickly through life that they hadn't allowed themselves to truly feel anything. Stress had turned them into someone who reacted to everything instead of experiencing it. But now, with the help of something as simple as music, they were learning to slow down. After that walk, the park became part of their weekly routine. Every weekend, they went back, music playing softly, letting the world around them blend with the world inside them. Sometimes they brought a notebook, sometimes just themselves. But the feeling was always the same peace. One afternoon, while sitting at home with the music playing, they noticed something important. Their sleep had improved. It wasn't something they'd been monitoring closely, but one morning, they woke up realizing they had slept deeply without waking up several times during the night. They felt more refreshed than usual. It was a quiet benefit, one that had crept in slowly. But it made a big difference. With better sleep came more energy during the day. They found themselves smiling more often, even laughing at moments that they would have brushed off before. Life didn't feel as heavy anymore. It still had its difficult moments. Those moments didn't consume everything the way they used to. At work, they started handling tasks more efficiently. Their focus improved, and they felt mentally clearer. Each time stress began to rise, they reminded themselves of the musical rhythm that brought calm. It was like having a small tool inside their mind that they could reach for whenever things became overwhelming. One morning, they woke up earlier than usual without even planning to. The room was quiet, and the sun was barely rising. They played the playlist, sat by the window, and watched the sky brighten slowly. The moment felt almost magical simple, but full of meaning. As they sat there, they realized how far they had come. A few months ago, they were exhausted, overwhelmed, and unsure how to keep going. Now, they were building a life that felt calmer, more balanced, more connected to themselves. The music had become a part of them. Not in a dramatic or obvious way, but in a gentle, steady way like breathing, or the rhythm of the heart. Another change happened in how they interacted with others. When friends talked about their own stress or worries, they felt more patient and understanding. They listened more deeply, offering comfort instead of quick answers. They even recommended the playlist to one or two people who seemed overwhelmed. They didn't expect anything from it, but they hoped it could bring someone else even a small moment of peace. One evening, while sitting with the music playing, they made a quiet promise to themselves to continue choosing moments of calm, to protect their peace, and to make space for things that help their minds stay steady. It wasn't a big, dramatic vow. It was a soft, honest one. With each passing day, the playlist continued to shape their life in small ways. The melodies became familiar, almost like footprints they followed from morning to night. They could recognize certain pieces by the first note alone, and those notes felt personal, like a message from the music itself. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Stress still found its way into some days. There were still moments when things felt overwhelming. But those moments no longer controlled their whole world. They had learned how to pause, breathe, and let the music guide them back to balance. The playlist had become a daily companion, quiet, steady, patient. And they knew deep inside that this new rhythm was only the beginning of something even calmer. Even more meaningful, their journey with classical music therapy had only just begun. But already it had given them something priceless, a gentle path through the noise of life, and a sense of peace they had almost forgotten existed. The weeks kept moving forward, and the main character continued living with this new rhythm that classical music had brought into their life. Each day felt a little different now, not because the world had changed, but because they had slowly begun to see things from a calmer place. The music had become part of their daily habits, almost like breathing, and it helped them go through life with more patience than before. But even with all the progress they had made, there came a week when everything felt heavier again. It started with small things: a missed deadline, unexpected changes at work, a long meeting that drained their energy. Those little moments built up, And by midweek, the pressure inside them felt familiar, the kind of tightness they used to carry before the music became part of their routine. They tried to stay calm, reminding themselves to breathe, but the stress pushed against them harder than usual. Even the morning music didn't seem to settle their mind the way it normally did. It wasn't that the playlist stopped working, but their thoughts were louder, faster, harder to quiet. One evening after work, they came home feeling exhausted, in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. Their shoulders felt heavy, their head felt crowded, and for the first time in a long while, they felt like shutting down completely. Without thinking, they dropped their bag on the couch, sat on the floor, and leaned back against the wall. The room was silent for a moment. Then they reached for their phone and pressed play on the same playlist that had guided them through so many evenings before. The first few notes spread through the room softly, but this time, instead of instantly calming them, the music made them feel their emotions even more. Their eyes stung. Their chests tightened. It took only a minute before tears began to rise, not out of sadness, but out of everything they had been holding back. The pressure, the expectations, the constant need to keep moving, keep working, keep being okay. The music didn't push the emotions away. It allowed them to come forward gently, for the first time in weeks. They let themselves feel everything instead of trying to bury it. The violins played softly, a slow, steady melody that felt like a hand on their shoulder. They let the tears fall quietly, without shame, without fear. The music carried them through it, reminding them that even strong emotions didn't need to be overwhelming. They could be released slowly. Like breath, after several minutes, the tears stopped and they wiped their face, feeling a deep sense of relief. They didn't feel weak for crying. In fact, they felt lighter, calmer, as if the music had helped their heart loosen a knot it had been holding for too long. They sat there, breathing slowly, listening to the next track play. This one was softer, like the sound of early morning light. It reminded them of peaceful moments they had experienced in the past, small moments they rarely paused to remember. Somehow the music guided them back to themselves. As the playlist continued, something shifted inside them. They began to reflect on their life not in a heavy or painful way, but with gentle honesty. They thought about how far they had come, how many changes they had made, and how much calmer they had become over the past months. Even though the week had been difficult, they knew they weren't the same person who used to crumble under stress. After a long while, they got up, poured themselves a glass of water, and sat at the table with their notebook. They hadn't planned on writing, but something inside them encouraged it. They opened to a blank page and wrote about the pressure they felt that week, the tears, the music, and the strange comfort that had come afterward. Their handwriting was slow and steady. They didn't rush the words. They simply let them flow naturally. When they were done, they closed the notebook and took a deep breath. They felt clarity returning, a soft kind of clarity that felt honest, not forced. That night, they slept deeply, deeper than they had in weeks. The next morning, they woke up with a sense of calm that surprised them. The sunlight coming through the window felt warm instead of sharp, and the air felt gentler. They started their usual routine, playing the playlist, stretching a little, sitting quietly before getting ready. But this time, the music touched them differently. It wasn't just calming. It felt grounding. Throughout the day, they noticed they were more aware of their emotions instead of letting them pile up. When something stressful happened at work, they acknowledged it but didn't let it consume them. When a coworker spoke in a frustrated tone, they didn't take it personally. They took things as they came, one moment at a time. During lunch, they stepped outside for a short walk. They didn't listen to music at that moment, but the calm rhythm from the playlist lingered in their mind. They noticed the sound of leaves rustling, the pattern of shadows under the trees, the distant sound of someone laughing. It felt nice to pay attention to the world again. In the evening, they played the playlist again, but this time with intention. They made a warm drink, dimmed the lights, and sat on the couch with their eyes closed. Instead of letting the music fill the background, they let it guide them into stillness. Each note felt meaningful. Each melody felt like a reminder that life didn't have to move so fast. As the week continued, they realized that the difficult moments had taught them something valuable. The music wasn't just helping them relax, it was helping them understand themselves better. It gave them space to feel, think, breathe, and reflect. It helped them slow down in a world that constantly pushed them to move faster. The playlist became their anchor. Not a curl, not a magic solution, but something steady they could rely on. It became a safe space they could return to whenever the world felt too loud. One evening, after finishing dinner, they turned the music on again and sat by the window. They watched as the sky changed colors from light blue to soft orange to deep purple. They realized how long it had been since they peacefully watched a sunset. As the music played, they felt their thoughts slow down. They felt more connected to themselves and to the quietness of the moment. It reminded them that life wasn't only about work, responsibilities, or pressure. It was also about small moments of peace, on the choice to stop and feel them. Later that weekend, they decided to share the playlist with someone who had been going through their own stress. They didn't push it on them or explain too much. They simply said it had helped them feel calmer. Whether the other person used it or not didn't matter. What mattered was that the journey they had started was now extending to others. They spent that weekend taking care of themselves. They cleaned their space slowly, made warm meals, and spent more time reflecting. They allowed themselves to rest without feeling guilty. The music played softly throughout the day, linking each moment together. At one point, they lay on the floor with a pillow under their head, letting the notes flow around them. They imagined the sound as soft ripples spreading through a still pool of water, each ripple calming their thoughts as the melody played. They felt grateful, again grateful, for the music, for the progress they had made, for the strength they had discovered inside themselves. They realized something important. Peace wasn't something that appeared all at once. It came in small moments, quiet shifts, gentle choices, and music had helped guide them toward those choices. The week that had started with stress ended with clarity. They understood themselves a little better now. They understood the importance of slowing down, feeling emotions instead of running from them, choosing calm even when life felt overwhelming. The playlist had become more than a collection of tracks. It had become a companion through difficult days, a guide during quiet reflections, and a steady light through stressful times, and deep inside, they felt ready for whatever came next. Because they knew now how to return to their own calm whenever life became too heavy. The final months of this journey felt different from anything the person had experienced before. Life no longer rushed past them the way it once did. There was a softness in their days now, a quiet rhythm that made everything feel calmer and easier to face. It wasn't that their problems had disappeared. Work still demanded long hours. People still needed things from them, and unexpected stresses still showed up without warning. But something inside them had changed. They no longer reacted with the same panic or tension. Instead, they paused, breathed, and let the music guide them back to a peaceful state. Every morning, they woke up a little earlier than before. Not because they had to, but because they wanted those extra minutes of stillness. They would sit near the window, where the light slowly entered the room, and let the soft classical melodies fill the space. The sound of gentle strings and calm piano notes helped their minds settle before the day even began. This became their favorite moment, a moment that belonged only to them. At work, their coworkers often wondered how they stayed so composed. Changes in schedules, teamwork challenges, or unexpected tasks no longer overwhelmed them. They handled each situation with patience. Even when someone spoke in a sharp tone or rushed them, they remained calm inside. They had learned to take a slow, steady breath before responding. Many times they heard the soft tune of their favorite piece playing in their mind, guiding them to answer kindly. One day during lunch, a colleague approached them and asked why they seemed so relaxed lately. The person smiled gently and said it was because of a playlist they had found months earlier. They didn't go into too much detail, but the colleague seemed curious. Later that day, the person sent the playlist link to them. They felt good knowing that something which had helped them so much might help someone else too, in the evenings. Their routine also changed. Instead of scrolling endlessly through their phone or watching random videos, they now spent time unwinding in a quiet environment with the same comforting music playing in the background. Sometimes they stretched lightly. Other times they wrote their thoughts in a simple notebook. The words didn't have to be perfect. They just needed to be honest. Writing helped them release tension they didn't even know they were carrying. They also started taking short walks after dinner. The streets were calmer at that time, and the night breeze felt good against their skin. They listened to the soft tunes through their earphones as they walked slowly. These walks became calming moments that helped them reflect on their day without judgment or worry. They noticed small things they had never paid attention to before, like the sound of leaves brushing against each other, the gentle flicker of streetlights, and the distant hum of the city. Their relationships also improved over time. People around them felt more comfortable opening up because they sensed this calmness in them. They listened better, responded with more kindness, and showed more empathy. It wasn't something they planned. It just happened naturally, as the inner peace they felt slowly showed in the way they interacted with others. Months passed. The playlist that had once been a small discovery became a big part of their life. There were days when they felt emotional for no major reason, but the music helped them release whatever they were holding inside. On other days, they felt grateful that something so simple could bring so much healing. They even started exploring more classical pieces, learning about the composers and discovering the stories behind the music. They didn't become an expert, nor did they try to. They simply enjoyed the journey. The music made them feel connected to something bigger, something timeless and gentle. One evening, they sat at their desk and looked at the playlist title again. Classical Music Therapy, Stress Relief Collection. They remembered the night they had first clicked on it. Back then, they were tired, overwhelmed, and searching for anything that could offer a little comfort. They had no idea that one small choice would slowly guide them toward a healthier, more peaceful life. They thought about how far they had come. The sleepless nights were gone. The constant headaches had faded. Their mind no longer felt like a storm of thoughts fighting for attention. There was space inside, now space, to think, to breathe, to feel, and to hope. They closed their eyes and let the soft melody play once more. As they listened, they understood something they had never realized before. Healing did not always need to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it arrived quietly, through something as simple as a piece of music. Sometimes it entered the heart without, asking for permission, and changed everything from the inside. And that was exactly what had happened to them, A little while later. They shared their experience with a small group of friends who mentioned feeling stressed. They explained how classical music didn't solve every problem, but helped them stay calm enough to think clearly. The friends were curious and asked for the playlist link. Sharing it felt meaningful. It's like passing along a small light to someone walking through their own dark moment. As more time passed, the person realized they had built a healthy rhythm in their life. They no longer forced themselves to work nonstop. They took breaks when needed. They rested without guilt. They enjoyed small joys without rushing to the next thing. The music had taught them the value of slowing down and being present. On weekends, they sometimes played the playlist while cleaning, cooking, or simply sitting on the floor with a cup of warm tea. Every task felt lighter with the music in the background. Even chores felt less like pressure and more like moments of gentle movement. One quiet Sunday morning, they sat on their balcony with the music playing softly beside them. They watched the world wake up, slowly the birds calling out, the sky changing color, people beginning their day. They felt peaceful, truly peaceful, for the first time in a long time. They knew life would still bring challenges. There would still be stressful days, unexpected issues, and moments of frustration. But the difference now was the strength they felt inside. They had found something that helped them return to calm no matter what happened. The playlist had been a simple discovery, but it became a guiding force. It helped them rebuild themselves from the inside, little by little, day by day. It helped them understand that peace was not something far away, was something they could create. As the final piece of the playlist played, they closed their eyes with a small smile. Music had healed them in ways they never expected. It had brought them back to themselves. And now they move through life with a gentle rhythm, a soft heart, and a mind that finally felt free. The Classical Music Therapy Stress Relief Collection not only changed their days, but it changed the way they lived their life. And this quiet, powerful transformation was something they carried forward. Forever grateful for the moment they pressed play,